Hi there, I am Holly McDonald with the Costa Mesa Pod, where we discuss all things concerning the lifestyle, businesses, and activities that make Costa Mesa such a great place to live. Today, I am joined by Nathaniel Fuentes of Fat Stance. Nathaniel, thanks for being here.
Hey, Holly, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's chat a little bit about Fat Stance. What's your business? What do you do?
So primarily I build custom cars. We do a lot of fitment builds, lowered cars, bigger wheels, things that you would see at Cars and Coffee or maybe at a car show, things along those lines. And then just a lot of like wide bodies and lowered cars, air suspension, things along those lines.
Yeah. So what got you into it? Have you always had a love for cars?
I did. I think my first car when I was like 17 or 18, I hate to say it, but I was watching Fast and the Furious like all the other teens at that time. And I got that bug and I started modifying back then. And, I went down a different career path. I used to be like a graphic designer. So I have a background in like media and marketing. And then one day I just was like, didn't want to be behind a desk anymore. And a good friend of mine and I, we launched the company together. And just kind of grew from there. It was just like a love for cars that just kind of turned into what it is today.
Yeah, I find it interesting because there are a lot of like car shows and whatnot in our area. So, clearly there are a lot of people that are into their cars. What are your thoughts on Southern California car culture?
I think that we're like kind of one of the meccas in actually not just California, but like overall throughout the country and even in some cases worldwide, just because like in California, we have so many people who drive. We don't necessarily take public transportation as much. So cars not only are necessary, but they start becoming like a personal identifying factor. Like, it could be a status symbol for some people. It might be one that tells everybody how much you love the holidays when you get, your reindeer front end on during Christmas time or things along those lines. So it's really cool over here. I think especially now that we are focusing more on the way the aesthetics of the cars look and less on performance, because performance used to be like a really big aspect of our car culture. Now we're getting a lot of people that are putting wraps on their cars or doing body kits or, like putting their customized stickers on the back of their cars. And it's kind of cool. It just really shows a personalization of the scene and people here in California.
Yeah, I think it's interesting on the podcast because we talk a lot about local businesses. I often talk about how many businesses here are, individuals that are entrepreneurs and have their own businesses, right? So it's interesting because in a lot of ways, cars can be like your business on wheels, literally.
Very
So
much.
wrapping the cars and putting like the marketing and advertising on it, that takes it to a whole other level just because of the area that we live in and the types of businesses that people have here.
Absolutely. I mean, I see mobile tinters. I see mobile dog grooming. I live on the east side of Costa Mesa, so we're right up against Newport Back Bay. And there are just so many cool. You just go down the street and you'll see like a van or a truck with somebody's either their logo or something related to their business on their car. It's nice to know that these people are local, that you're kind of supporting the community, and these are your neighbors that you're doing business with instead of, jumping on Yelp and just finding somebody from Orange or somewhere else that you're going to. So I totally agree. It's crazy to see how many people are very much local and have their own entrepreneurial spirit.
So here in Costa Mesa, I'm just curious. Obviously, your business, I'm sure, caters to people wherever, in the area. Doesn't have to just be Costa Mesa, but how do you feel like your business fits into Costa Mesa as a lifestyle and a culture?
So what's really interesting is I didn't think of that before moving here and before setting up shop here. I just moved here because I felt like it was a really good vibe with the way my personality and what I was looking for in this particular part of my life. But as I settled in and I started networking with other car people in the industry, I realized that some of the biggest names in cars are here in Costa Mesa. We have, like all through Logan Street, there are all these like very high-end bullet performance and things like that. That was really surprising to realize that they're here, but it's kind of one of those quiet things where if you're not in that scene, you won't even know that they're there because they're kind of off to one part of our city that's not frequented by everybody. And
Yeah.
then I start looking up addresses for places, and I was like, oh, that's right down the street. Oh, we do business with those people. So, yeah, I think that here in Costa Mesa, you actually have a huge car scene and a lot of those aftermarket performance automotives over here.
Yeah, there seems to be like a lot of fancy car museums over by the airport and like in some of the industrial areas too. Like, I think some of them are just like car collectors, and some of them are, well, I don't even know how it all works, but I know that there are some really cool places with a lot of fancy cars.
John Marconi from Marconi Auto Museum, he's actually one of my clients. I've done a few of his Mercedes, and he's really a cool guy. There's that one, and then I know sometimes I'll have car stuff in that same area around Airport Loop. There's actually, I don't know if you're familiar with it, they're basically condominiums for cars. If you ever get a
Mm,
chance to take a look at it in that area, but you buy a condo specifically to store your cars. You don't live there. You just have
yeah.
like car storage, and they have a loft, and people build them out to be super custom. So like they'll have huge like Porsche logos on the sides. They'll have lounges where they have, like a bar or things along those lines. And it's all just centered around their cars, which I think is really interesting.
That's cool. So it's like real estate for your car. We definitely
Yes,
need more calls
exactly.
than that.
We definitely do. It's really crazy with those two because they have like an association because you're all part of kind of like a master plan community if you want to call it that. So they have a meeting space that you can come to and have your guests there if you want to. They have like a little kitchenette that has like free little goodies for you, waters and coffee and things along those lines. And then they host their own version of Cars and Coffee. I think it's like 1 or 2 weekends per month. They'll have one of the local coffee carts that comes there on site, and then everybody brings their show cars. It's pretty fun.
Oh, my son would love that. We go to lots. My son's 3. He loves cars. He's
Oh,
definitely into that phase of life, and he's all about Hot Wheels. He's all about car shows. So I'll have to take him.
definitely.
So you are. I see you quite a bit on Costa Mesa Buzz. It's like a, for people who don't know, it's a community page basically on Facebook, and similar to a Nextdoor, it's just like a community forum. That's actually how I connected with you, but wanted to know a little bit about, if you don't mind sharing, just your background. How did you end up in Costa Mesa? You mentioned that the vibes seem to fit you. Explain a little bit about that, because Costa Mesa really has a lot of different vibes, and I think that's part of what makes it so cool. But what are your thoughts?
I agree with that. So I lived in Huntington Beach before here, so I was actually in downtown Huntington, and that was through most of like my mid to late 20s, early 30s. And it was
Yeah.
perfect for that time because, single guy, like you're out there, you want to go to either a bar or a restaurant or hang out with your friends. It was a walking distance. You don't have to worry about getting an Uber or driving. Just have fun on the weekends. And then there came a point, it was actually right around like the end of 2019 where I'm like, I think it's time for me to grow up. So I was looking for somewhere that still had a lot of culture, that still had nightlife, but not necessarily that party scene that, Huntington is so well known for. And I started looking around, and Costa Mesa was actually on my list of places to check out. And I had a bunch of friends who simultaneously, but not, they didn't know each other, but they talked all the same time. They all told me to go to Costa Mesa. Like, this is going to be the perfect place for you. You should check it out. So it was really interesting because within a matter of a few weeks, I went from not knowing where I was going to move to being sure that I was going to be moving here. So that was like Thanksgiving 2019.
Okay.
I had these great ideas of what I wanted to do to join the community and to, set up my place. And then of course, pandemic came about. So there was kind of this delay where I felt like I knew people kind of like you. It's like I know of you, but we haven't necessarily met in person. In the last maybe year or two, I've done a lot more of really interacting with people in person. Mary Spadoni, who I'm sure you're familiar with, she's got the beautiful Halloween and Valentine's Day and all that stuff. She's a good friend, and we pop over to her place every so often and help her with the decorations and all that. And that was one of those things where I didn't do necessarily early on, moving over here.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's interesting. I've never really thought of Costa Mesa as the place you go to grow up, but I mean, yes, it's a little more low key than, the party scene of downtown Huntington or like the peninsula too. I have heard people say that about the peninsula, where it's like, yeah, we liked living there, but maybe like we want to grow a family or whatever, or just have more room for our dog. And it's like, you can't really get that in those tight quarters. So yeah,
No,
that's,
definitely. I think you're right though when it comes down to Costa Mesa though. Like we do have so many different areas. I didn't even know until moving here. I mean, like I literally live next to the East Side sign, the one that's over here off of Del Mar. And I
yeah.
saw it and I thought, how pretentious. Why does this place have an East Side sign? And then after joining the buzz that you mentioned, people started explaining to me there's a very huge cultural difference, kind of like, I want to say on either side of Harbor almost. Um, and that was interesting. It wasn't until I started exploring to actually see, like, we have, as you mentioned, automotive or more industrial areas. We have the east side over here that's definitely more like multifamily and single family residents, a lot of families over here. And then you get over towards like South Coast Plaza area, which is definitely more of like that higher end and more restaurants and things along those lines. So it's real interesting as you move in one direction or another, how the culture definitely changes in the city.
Yeah, I used to live really close to where you live, so near the East
Okay.
Side sign. I lived there for a little while. I loved it, but I've also lived in like Mesa Verde and different, which is in West Side. Lived kind of all
Sure.
around town, and yeah, it feels like a different phase of life every time you move to a different neighborhood, regardless of it
100%.
if it's in Costa Mesa. But like, it is cool to see that you can find a community wherever you go and like really embrace it. And I think it's very cool that through Costa Mesa Buzz too, you're able to market yourself, whether you don't even really market your company, honestly, but you're just able to get to know the community, which is really nice. It makes a big city that, we have over 100,000 people. It makes it feel a little bit smaller and more personable.
I definitely like that. I also started another Buy Nothing group as well because we were having some issues with the other one kind of getting at its capacity, and a lot of people are getting turned away from that. So starting that group's been really fun too because you just get to know so many neighbors that you're lending them a vacuum, or you're giving away some blankets or something else that somebody might need. And that's really been nice to kind of like bring the community together and really make it a lot smaller too because you start to really get to know the people that live near you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that it is nice that people do want to like share and help one another for the most part, especially when they're on those groups. And, I mean, it is a melting pot when you're in some of those communities. You really see like there is a wide range here in Costa Mesa. Again, part of what makes it so beautiful. Like, sure, we're in the Orange County bubble, but it's less of a bubble. Like it has, a lot of different variation in it.
I totally agree. I think that it diversifies itself from South OC because, the South OC's bubble is you can live there and not really know what's going on in the rest of the world. I like
Yeah.
Costa Mesa, Newport, parts of Irvine because you're kind of in this like interesting transition area between getting closer towards like, North OC and getting towards LA, Long Beach and things along those lines where things are a little bit more hustle and bustle. But you still have a lot of the amenities and, the safety. I think it's a really big, the safety that we would have from South OC still kind of permeates in our neighborhood. So that's
Yeah.
kind of one of the things that I chose because I have a son as well. And, sometimes he's with me and I wanted to make sure that he was in a place that was going to be safe where I didn't have to worry about him going outside and playing with his friends or going around the corner to the convenience store and being like, oh shoot, is he going to be safe to do that? And we have that here, which is really nice.
Yeah. How old is your son?
He's 15. So when we
Yeah.
moved here, he was 10 going on 11. So he was definitely a lot littler at the time.
Yeah, but I mean, as a parent, you always have to be thinking about the safety and well-being of your family and everything. So that makes a lot of sense. I also like that in East Side and even parts of West Side, the houses have like there are lots of older homes that have a lot of charm that you don't necessarily see in Orange County. A lot of people think of Orange County as like the cookie cutter, like everything looks the same. And sure, we have some of that too, but there are definitely areas where you can find like charm and like a 1920s construction and it's still really cool.
That was something I'm sure you've seen on the buzz too, where people send out photos of like what Costa Mesa Newport area looked like 50 or 100 years ago or whatnot. And it's personally one of the things that I love about living in a city that's had been around for that amount of time is that, like you said, there are these old buildings or these old cultural pieces that you weren't even aware of, but they're still iconically part of our city.
Yeah.
I grew up in Moreno Valley, which is out on the other side of Riverside. And that's one of those younger cities that's not, I think it got incorporated in the 80s. So it's definitely like much, much newer. I joke about it because you can't really find a building over like 4 stories there. Everything's very small. They're all tract homes. There's nothing fancy going on over there. It's very, very, and there's not a whole lot of culture with it either. Whereas here in Costa Mesa, we have, that culture. Huntington does. I love going to San Juan because they've been around for like 150, 180 years. So I totally agree. There's a lot of really great stuff to check out over here in Costa Mesa. It's been around for a really, really long time.
Awesome. Yeah, I think just giving that perspective to people, like you said, you've lived pretty locally for a while and didn't know a lot about what Costa Mesa had to offer until you basically got here. But for anybody, I mean, I'm not from California, but when I was living in California and decided to move to Orange County, I had no clue about Costa Mesa. I just knew there was South Coast Plaza, and that was pretty much it. So getting here, you find out it's a lot more than a big fancy mall. Like there's a lot of different things going on. And I just think it's good for people to see what sort of variety and spice of life we have here. So I'm sure as a car buff, you probably appreciate that we've got the old fashioned stuff, whether it's in the homes or the buildings and the cars that you work on.
It's really fun. I haven't been able to roam around here in Costa Mesa a lot, but when we get over to Newport, which is literally a stone's throw away, we end up seeing a lot of these cool classic cars there. So you'll see like 1960s like Fords and Dodges and things along those lines. Obviously higher socioeconomic. If they have a yard and they have a driveway, it's definitely more likely that they're going to have, a nice car as well versus like apartment dwelling. But no, there's some really cool stuff if you roam around through the areas and you just kind of like see. What I didn't know either is that we have like a whole equestrian area as you get towards Newport Back Bay. There's a little section where you'll see like peacocks and you'll see people with their horses and things that I would have never guessed would be that close to the rest of us.
So I knew about the horses, but you don't see them every day, right? But the peacocks I did not know about. That's really, really cool too. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got everything.
Sometimes I go and watch the dog and all of a sudden you'll see them and you're like, wait, what is that doing here?
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. Yeah, we've got a mix of everything. We got the beach culture, we got the farm culture, we have it all. So, well, Nathaniel, thank you so much for sharing more about your business, of course, and who you are, how you got here. Do you want to let everybody know where they can find your business on Instagram or the socials?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to Instagram, it's fat_stance. And if you look online, it's www.fat-stance.com. And just come by. I always tell everybody, if I don't personally do it, I'm always happy to refer you to somebody who does. Primarily, like I said, we do mainly like the suspension and the wide bodies and some things along those lines. But if you need tint or car audio or wraps or things along those lines, just come by and I'll refer you to one of my friends who will do all things.
Awesome. Well, Nathaniel, thank you so much for being here. It was nice to chat with you and connect almost in person.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Holly. I really appreciate you. Good meeting you.